Friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. It's my fault, and I accept it. I'm not trying to blame anyone else. I let it happen, and up until the moment it all went wrong, I was an active participant. If I blame anything for this, it's only love. I fell head over heels in love with Maeve at first sight. It was at a cocktail party that my company was hosting for our customers and suppliers. I was talking to a sales representative of a company that sold us some chemicals used in our production when she entered the room. She was walking arm in arm with a man I didn't like right away. I had never met him, never talked to him, never even heard of him, but my dislike was very strong because she was with him, not with me. She was a rather tall woman, about 170 centimeters tall. Her blonde hair hung below her shoulders. She had a very beautiful body, but I must admit, I didn't spend much time trying to determine her weight or size. Her face caught my attention. I do not know how to describe it. There were some features and angles in her face. She looked awfully like the star Crystal Summers. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Suddenly a hand appeared in front of my face. Fingers snapped and a voice said, "Land for Rob, land for Rob. Answer me, please." Charlie, the sales representative I was talking to, chuckled and said, "Obviously, nothing I say will affect you while she's in the room, so I'm going to let you go. Call me in the morning." Then he laughed, said, "Good luck," and headed for the bar, leaving me standing there staring at Maeve. I was still looking at her when she turned her head and our eyes met. I felt a chill all the way down to my heels. She didn't smile at me or nod her thanks. She looked into my eyes for a couple of seconds and then looked away. I spent the rest of the cocktail party watching her and writing down who she was talking to so that I could approach them later and hopefully learn more about her in conversation with them. I was standing at the counter, waiting for the barmaid to make me a vodka with tonic and lime, when she came and stood next to me. She ordered a Cosmo and then turned to me and said, "Do I have a big nasty stain on my skirt or something?" I didn't notice. "Why did you ask?" "Because every time I look in your direction, you look at me. I'm not one to miss an opportunity, and that's why I said, does it come as a surprise at your age? You know that you are stunningly beautiful and that men, including me, will be fascinated by you. I've spent most of the evening since you walked in trying to figure out how to get to know you. It would be nice to come up to me and say hello. I know, but it would be awkward in society since you're here with another guy." "Why should it be awkward? You're not going to say, 'Hi, I'd like to get you into bed,' are you?" "Of course not. But your date would know that my real goal when I approach you would be to try to separate you from him. And that's what would make the situation awkward." "Well, lucky for you. He's just a guy, and he can be replaced. I just have a soft spot for guys who find me charming." She held out her hand and said, "Maeve Billings, and I'm warning you in advance that I hate being called May." I took her hand, raised it to my lips, kissed it lightly, and said, "Rob? Rob Daltrey. Nice to meet you, Rob. Although my date can be replaced, he's still my date tonight, and I need to get back to him." She started to walk away and then turned to me. "I'm in the directory, Rob Daltrey." She turned and walked back to her date. The next night, I called her and invited her to have dinner with me on Friday, and she said she would be happy too. Maeve possessed me from the very beginning. Our first date was enough for me to realize that I had found the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. The first date was followed by a second, and the second by a third. I wanted to take her in my arms and make crazy, passionate love to her, but I kept my hands to myself and behaved decently. I wouldn't do anything to scare her off or make her push me away. At the end of our third date, I walked Maeve to the door of her apartment, told her I had a great time, and bent down to kiss her on the cheek, but she put her hand on my chest, stopping me. "Do I have bad breath, Rob?" "No, of course not." "Then kiss me." And she put her arms around my neck and pulled me to her. It was a long, passionate kiss, and when we interrupted it, she turned, unlocked the door and opened it. Then she turned to me, took hold of my tie and pulled me along. Once inside, she turned around and gave me another very passionate kiss, and then said, "I'm not the least bit old-fashioned, Rob. I'm a very modern girl who gets what she wants, and right now I want you. The bedroom is that way." And she turned and walked away from me. She walked 8 or 10 steps and then turned around and looked at me standing there, stunned by the suddenness of it all. "Are you coming?" She asked and headed for her bedroom. Finally, I gathered my courage and followed her. When I entered the room, she was waiting for me, smiled and said, "Good boy." And then she began to undress. There was no music, and she didn't make any of the movements that strippers usually do. But watching Maeve undress was one of the most erotic sights I've ever seen. First, she pulled off her dress, and it fell off, forming a puddle at her feet. She smiled and looked into my eyes, casually tossing the dress into a corner, and her hands reached for her bra. The bra came off, and she threw it aside. And, still looking into my eyes, took off her panties and, without looking, threw them over her shoulder. She stood in front of me in a garter belt, nylon stockings, and high heels and said, "Well?" I looked at her in confusion, and she said, "I think I'm the only one naked here." Maybe everything was happening too fast for me, but I wasn't stupid, so I hurriedly undressed. As I stood and looked at her with eyes full of desire, I confessed, "I'm scared. I'm afraid I might not appreciate you. Try your best, honey. We have the whole night ahead of us." This marked the beginning of a relationship that lasted almost 2 years. It happened over and over again, because even though Maeve kept telling me that I was the man she wanted to settle down with, she wasn't ready to settle down. I wasn't thrilled about it, but Maeve was a very strong-willed person, and there was a lot of her way or the high road in her, and I was in no hurry to hit the road, in her opinion, so I took what I could get. The first time she did this to me, we dated for about 6 months. In fact, dating is not exactly the right word to call it. We practically lived together. After our first night of passionate love, we immediately became a couple, and she slept either at my place or I in her apartment. Anyway, one evening I called her at work and asked the usual question. "What would you like to cook for dinner, and where would you like to spend the evening, at your place or at mine?" "Neither one nor the other, darling. I have a date tonight." "A date?" "Yes." "What kind of date is this?" "Dinner, and then maybe dancing." I was silent for a minute or two, thinking about it, and then I said, "Oh, have a good time," and hung up. The phone rang almost immediately, and the caller ID said it was Maeve, so I ignored the call. I grabbed my keys and headed to the Extra Point Sports Bar, where my cousin George worked. I sat down at the counter and ordered a blackjack with water, and then I sat there and got drunk. I thought Maeve and I had something going on, but obviously I was wrong about that. I had a couple of drinks at the bar, and then my friends came and we played billiards until closing time. The next day at work, I considered calling Maeve at the advertising agency where she worked, but eventually changed my mind. She decided to sever the connection between us, and I had no real rights to her. Why call and pretend that I'm begging? A week passed, and Maeve called me. "Can I come over tonight?" "No, I have a date tonight." "A date?" "Yes. We'll have dinner and maybe dance." "Would you like to dance?" "Yes, it is possible. She might want to do something else." "Who is this?" "Do I know her?" "I don't know. Maybe you know her." "What's her name?" "I have no idea, Maeve. I haven't met her yet, but I'm sure I'll find her at one of the places I'll stop by tonight." "I have to go, Maeve." While, as soon as I disconnected, the phone rang. The caller ID showed that it was Maeve, and I was surprised how she did it. This was the second time she was able to call me back immediately after I disconnected. It always seemed to me that it took me 20 or 30 seconds to get in touch with someone I was disconnected from. Well, one of the little mysteries of life. I grabbed the keys and headed for the bar. I had a few drinks, talked to George, and played a little pool. I went home around 11. When I entered my apartment and turned on the light, I found Maeve sitting on my couch. "You came home a little early. Did the date go badly?" I shrugged my shoulders. "Sometimes you're lucky, and sometimes you're not." "What's wrong with you? Are you tired of your new boyfriend, who is already ready?" "I don't have a new boyfriend. He was just a guy I met, and I thought I'd like to get to know him better. So why are you here?" As soon as I got to know him better, I realized that he wasn't worth bothering with. That's not the answer to the question. "Why are you here?" "Because you're my boyfriend." "Are you going to make me leave?" Looking back, I realized that I should have made her leave, but I was hopelessly in love with her, and so I said, "Of course not." And she stood up and said, "Take me to bed, baby. It's been 5 days now, and we need to catch up." When Maeve finished with me, I was so exhausted that the next day I had to take sick leave and not go to work. No one else mentioned her date. 5 months later, it happened again. Only this time we agreed to go to a concert. Maeve called me from work and said that something had happened at work and she would have to cancel the concert. She said she might be working late, so she would just go home to her apartment that evening. I didn't want to go to the concert alone, so I decided to have a snack and then go to the cinema. I had eaten and was driving down Madison on my way to the cinema when I saw Maeve and a man I didn't know walking hand in hand into the Fleetwood Hotel. At first I thought she was having dinner with a client because she told me that something had happened at work, but then I remembered that there was no restaurant or bar in Fleetwood, only a restroom. And why would she hold hands with a client? I can't even remember the name of the movie I watched, and I don't remember much about the movie itself, except that Reese Witherspoon was in it. What I remember most from my stay at that cinema was the constant repetition of the scene when Maeve and the man entered Fleetwood together. It was 6 days before I heard about Maeve again. She called me at work to ask if we were going to spend the night at her place or at mine. How about neither? We can get a room at the Fleetwood. It's time for me to go. I got a call on another line. That evening, when I returned from work, I did not go home. I went to the Extra Point, had a few drinks, talked to George, but refused to play billiards. When I got to my apartment, I saw Maeve in the Cherokee parking lot and prepared for the confrontation that was going to happen when I entered my apartment. I loved Maeve, but I wasn't a doormat and I wasn't going to let her wipe her feet on me anymore. I let it happen the first time, but I wasn't going to do it again. When I entered the apartment and flipped the switch, I looked towards the sofa, expecting to see Maeve sitting there, but the sofa was empty. Maeve was in the bedroom, naked. She was lying on top of the sheets and waiting for me. Before I could say a word, she said, "Hurry up, baby. I need you. I need you right now." I woke up to the smell of frying bacon. I hurried into the shower and then got dressed, getting ready for work. Maeve was setting the table when I entered the kitchen. The coffee was already poured, and when I sat down at the table, Maeve said, "Get to work. Eat well and have a good lunch. You're going to need all your strength tonight." Why are you trying to use me to death, Maeve? Weren't you used enough at Fleetwood last week? I always have few lovers, but to answer your unasked question, I will say that he meant nothing to me. You know that I am yours, baby, but I am young, healthy, and full of curiosity, and you need to satisfy this curiosity before the wedding, not after. I know I'm a little late with the question, but do you use protection when you satisfy your curiosity? That's a rude question. No, that's not true, Maeve. And the reason it doesn't is because I have no curiosity. I'm not the least bit interested in what venereal disease looks like. So if you're not protecting yourself, for now you're just curious. I'd rather you didn't get into my bed after you've satisfied your curiosity until you've at least been checked to make sure you don't have any illnesses. I finished my coffee, then got up and left. I didn't get a call at work that day asking who. So on the way home I stopped for a drink and had a few words with George. George got a little tired of listening to me whine about Maeve and he said, "Go away, Rob. Trust me, it's not worth it, because it's not worth it." It was easy for him to talk because he wasn't head over heels in love with her. Maeve's car wasn't in the parking lot when I arrived. I made myself dinner, watched a dinosaur movie on the History Channel, and went to bed early. I didn't hear her come in. "I'm sorry, kid. I promise it won't happen again." But 2 months later it happened again. And when I reminded her that she had promised me that it would not happen again, she told me that she had kept her promise and forced him to use protection. Then she asked me to take her to bed and show her once again why I was and always will be her main man. I don't want to be your main man, Maeve. I want to be your only man. You will be, but not now. I'm not ready to settle down. But not me, Maeve. The next day I went in search of an apartment, found one that I liked, and 3 days later I took time off from work and moved in. I didn't tell Maeve. That evening, my cell phone rang, and the display showed that Maeve had called. I didn't answer the call and switched it to voicemail. I waited a minute and then listened to the voice message. "Rob, baby, I'm at your house and there's no one here. What's happening?" I shrugged and deleted the message. The next day, I called my secretary into my office and asked her not to answer Maeve's calls. If Maeve called, I was always supposed to be out of the office or in an important meeting. I know it's not fair to drag you into my personal problems, but I'll make it worth it. Lunch for you and your 3 friends at the Hilton is on me every Friday for a month. Agreed? Donna smiled at me, held out her hand and said, "Deal," and we shook hands. I thought about Maeve every night as I drove home from work and wondered where she was. I was thinking about her while I was cooking dinner and watching TV and wondering where she was. At night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling and thought about her and wondered where she was. When I woke up in the morning, the first thing I saw was the empty side of the bed, and I thought about her and wondered where she was now. I loved this stupid fool and knew that it would not be easy to forget her, if at all possible, but I had no idea that it would be as difficult as it is now. Every day, Donna would hand me a stack of messages from Maeve, and I would throw them in the trash. Every day, 10 or 12 missed messages and voice messages came to my mobile, and I deleted them. George called me and said that Maeve had been asking about me, and she was asking everyone who knew me if they knew where I was. No one knew because I didn't tell anyone. I didn't often visit the bars and restaurants I used to go to, and even went so far as to bribe the guards in the lobby of the building to warn me whenever Maeve appeared nearby. This paid off, and several times I had to leave the building in the evenings through the loading dock. They called me several times and told me that Maeve was sitting in the parking lot waiting for me to go to work in the morning. I managed to avoid any contact with Maeve for 2 whole months. So one evening I came home from work to my new apartment and found Maeve waiting for me. Before she could say a word, I asked, "How did you find me?" "The old-fashioned way. I hired a private investigator." "You're not serious, are you?" "Oh, but it's true. You spent a lot of money on a private investigator? For God's sake, why?" "Because you ran away, and it was important for me to know where my main man was." "I'm not interested in being your main man." "I told you so. The status of the only man is all I agree to. Can we go inside and talk about this? I mean, it really doesn't concern your neighbors." "What the hell?" She already knew where I lived, so I opened the door and let her in. "Why can't you understand that you are my man?" "That's because I'm not your man, Maeve. I do not know why you keep telling yourself that I am your man, but obviously I am not. If I were your man, you wouldn't mess with other men. I'm someone you can use as a support, someone you can lean on when things don't work out. Well, I'm not going to be your backup anymore. I once asked you to marry me and agreed when you said you weren't ready to settle down. Now I understand that you will never be ready to settle down. You'll always find some other guy you want to make love to for a while. Good. I accept that this is how it will be, but I will not live like this. Now it's time for me to move on." "You can't think that, Rob, after all we've meant to each other." "I'm serious, Maeve. It's time for me, damn it. It's high time to move on." "Oh my God, Rob. Don't you realize that what we have now is almost perfect? Maybe for you, Maeve, but not for me. Don't you understand that marriage will change everything?" "What do you mean, Maeve?" "What would have changed, except that I would have stopped being your man 3/4 of the time and become him full-time? What would have changed, except that you would have had to stop being curious and satisfy that curiosity?" She was silent for a few seconds, and then said, "You couldn't live with me all the time, Rob. I'm too bossy a fool." "What did you tell me once?" "That I have something of my own way or the high road in me." "It's more than just a touch, Rob. Much more than a simple touch. I have to be in charge, Rob. My father was a real male chauvinistic pig. In his opinion, women were created on this earth for a single reason: to serve men. Lick my shoes, get a pipe and slippers, go to the kitchen and cook dinner. I'll never understand why my mother never killed him, but I grew up promising myself that I would never let a man control me in this way. Unfortunately, I went too far and became a female doppelganger of my father. Although maybe it's not that bad, but I have a need to command men. The men I've dated since I met you, I felt something of a submissive in each of them, so I dated them, pushed them around until I got tired of them, and then left them. How much are you my support?" "This is partly true, but only partly. You're my rock, my anchor. I need you, Rob. I love you and I have to be with you. I feel empty when you're not around. I've been completely unhappy for the last 2 months. I need you, Rob. I really need you." "Your need doesn't change anything, Maeve. I meant what I said. I don't want to be your main man. Either this is the only man or nothing. We wouldn't have lasted that long, Rob. I'd try to boss you around, and sooner or later you'd get tired of it. Sooner or later you would have left me. That's where we are now, Maeve. I'm tired of you leaving me and making love to other men, and then coming back to me and acting like it doesn't mean anything." "Well, maybe it doesn't mean anything to you, but I don't feel the same. And that's why I left you 2 months ago. I looked at her sitting there with a dejected look, and I wanted to hug her and comfort her, but I knew that if I did that, I would die. On the other hand, I loved her so much that it hurt. I made a decision and asked her, "Tell me about your need to control the situation. Be the boss?" What can I say? I need to be in charge. Are we talking about something kind of good? No, I just have to be in charge. Give me some examples. She thought for a moment and said, "With the last guy who wanted to take me to his house." I said no. I told him I wouldn't feel comfortable in his apartment, or I wouldn't take him in. So I told him we were going to Fleetwood's. I didn't offer Fleetwood, and I didn't ask him if Fleetwood would do. I just told him we were going to Fleetwood's. Why Fleetwood? I have no idea. The point was to tell him what we were going to do. The next night he wanted to go to the Cattleman's for dinner, but I said no, we'd go to Angelo's. And again, it was all about getting him to do what I wanted. It didn't matter what he wanted. I've always wanted the opposite and always got my way. It was the way you put it, in your own way or in a good way. And he always agreed with that. It looks like you had the perfect man. So why didn't you leave him? Because I didn't love him. All I wanted was to command him. Do you need to love someone in order to command them? As long as you could push him around, didn't you get what you wanted? Up to a certain point, yes. And what was that moment? This is the disadvantage of all this. I want to be the boss. I want to force him to do what I want, but at the same time he disgusted me because he was spineless. He did everything I told him to do just because he wanted to get into my underpants. Well, it worked. He really got into your underpants. Yes, he did, but only because I wanted to command him a little more. You do this to me all the time. Didn't you listen to me, Rob? It's not about what I like or what I do. It's about what I can do with this guy. Have any of them ever said, "No, I think we'll do it this way"? None of them have ever done this. What would have happened if they had done that? I would leave them. That's why we can't get married right now, Rob. Sooner or later, I try to boss you around. And I know you well enough to know that you wouldn't put up with it, and then I'd have a seizure. Everything would have gone downhill. You're probably right, Maeve. So we can go back to what happened? No, Maeve, I don't think so. I don't want to work part-time. She got up and slowly undressed and said, "Are you saying you don't want this?" Of course, I won't say this, but I'm telling you that today is the last time. Next time you come, I won't let you in, and you can take these words to the bank. We'll see about that, she said, and then added, "Show me the bedroom, lover." It was another grueling night. She was waiting for me when I returned from work the next day and smiled until I closed the door in her face. She came the next 3 nights in a row, but I wouldn't let her into my apartment. I didn't see her for a week, and then one evening she was sitting on the steps in front of my apartment door and waiting for me. When I came up, she stood up and said, "Okay, Rob, you've won. Set a wedding day." Maeve had no living relatives, and I only had a few aunts and uncles and my cousin George, so we decided to have a simple civil ceremony. Maeve knew the judge and arranged for him to conduct the ceremony. A week before the wedding, Maeve asked me to meet her for lunch. When I arrived at the restaurant, she was already there and made an order for both of us. We chatted for a while during the meal, and when we were done, she asked me to come back to her office with her. She said she wanted me to meet someone. When we entered the building, the guard waved at her and pointed to 2 men sitting in the waiting area. Maeve came over and talked to them for a minute, and then she came back to me and we got into the elevator. The elevator stopped at the 10th, top floor of the building, and Maeve led me down the hall to a room with "conference room" C written on the door. We entered the room, and there was a man sitting at a long conference table with a stack of documents in front of him. He stood up and greeted Maeve, and then looked at me and asked, "Is this the lucky guy?" "Indeed, it's him. Rob, this is Milton Spaulding. Milton, meet Rob. Milton is my lawyer." I looked at her with some confusion on my face. "Your lawyer?" "Yes. Milton handles most of my cases, and he wanted this meeting." "Most of your cases?" "Everything will be clear in a second. Have a seat and let's get started." "What should we start?" Milton looked at me in surprise. "Paperwork, of course." "Paperwork? What kind of paperwork?" Milton pushed a folder towards me and said, "Could you just sign the last page in the specified line?" and handed me a pen. "Sign what?" "A prenuptial agreement." "A prenuptial agreement? Why the hell do we need a prenup?" It sets out the obligations of both parties in the event of a divorce. I know what a prenuptial agreement is. The question was, what the hell do we need a prenuptial agreement for? We're not movie stars or anything like that. Why the hell would a sales manager and an advertising agency secretary need a prenuptial agreement? The secretary of an advertising agency? Milton said, and he and Maeve exchanged glances. He doesn't know, Maeve said. Milton turned to me and said, Miss Billings doesn't work at the agency. She owns it. The reason for the prenup is that Miss Billings' fortune is approaching 16 million. I have no idea what expression I had on my face when I heard that, but if it was physically possible, my jaw would have fallen to the floor. 16 million. I muttered to myself, and then looked at Maeve and said, How much more shit are you hiding from me, Maeve? How many more secrets are you hiding from me? First there was your authority, and now this. I pushed the folder back across the table to Milton. There is no need for a prenuptial agreement, Mr. Spaulding, because there will be no marriage. I got up and left the conference room. The suddenness of my departure took Maeve by surprise, and I was almost at the elevator when she ran out into the hallway screaming, Where are you going, Rob? Wait, Rob. Wait. The elevator was still on the floor, and the doors opened as soon as I pressed the button. I went in and pressed the exit button to the lobby, and the door closed when Maeve ran up to me, screaming, Wait, Rob. Please, Rob, don't leave. Before the door closed, I said, Goodbye, Maeve. When I went down to the lobby and the elevator door opened, I saw a guard standing there. I'm sorry, sir, but I've been ordered to keep you here until Miss Billings arrives. Of course you'll regret it if you get in my way. I started to walk past him, but he held out his hand to stop me. I hit him with my knee and then walked past his bent figure. After leaving the building, I called my secretary and told her that I would be visiting clients and would not return to the office, and then turned off my mobile phone and headed to the bar. About halfway there, I changed my mind about going. I didn't want to drink anymore. I didn't want to play billiards, and damn it, I didn't want to hear George say to me, I told you so. I went to Stevens Point, looked at the lake, and just stared at the geese and ducks, not thinking anything before pulling myself together and heading home. I wasn't surprised to see Maeve's Jeep Cherokee in the parking lot, and for a second or so I wondered if I should drive back out of the parking lot and go to the bar after all. But then I decided to just get it over with. When I entered the apartment, she was not in the living room, which told me that she was probably in the bedroom and, no doubt, naked to cloud my mind. I wasn't going to play this game. I went into the kitchen, took a beer out of the fridge, and sat down at the kitchen table. I was finishing my second beer when she came into the kitchen in my bathrobe. I didn't say a word, just looked at her and sipped my beer. She stood and looked at me for a few seconds, and then she got herself a beer and sat down opposite me. She took a sip of beer and then said, Why didn't you wait when I asked you to? Why and for what purpose? So you can feed me some more shit? I've never fed you any nonsense. No? How about letting me think that you work for an advertising agency? It wasn't a lie. I really work there. Okay, I didn't tell you that the agency belongs to me. So what? I still work there. You're lying, Maeve, and you know it. Everything I know about you, everything you've made me believe, is a lie. The way you dress, the way you live, the two-bedroom apartment in Woods Park, the Jeep Cherokee from 2 years ago, all this is designed to make me think that you are someone you are not. I haven't done anything to mislead you, Rob. I drive a Jeep because I can throw my sleeping bag and camping gear in the backseat, start the car with four-wheel drive, and go wherever I want. Why would I need a 2-year-old car when I could buy the latest and best from Detroit? Have you seen the scratches on this car? I drive this Cherokee through some pretty tough places. Why should I spend good money on a new car just to beat it? I live in a 2-bedroom apartment because it suits me. I can only sleep in 1 bedroom at a time. I have an extra bedroom for company, and I don't need anything else. Where the hell does it say that if someone has money, they should spend it on things they don't need? Would a BMW, Lexus, or Mercedes do a better job of transporting my camping gear? What good will I get from a 5-bedroom mansion? That would be another cause for concern. I would have to hire a caretaker to take care of the territory, because I definitely wouldn't do that. The same goes for the interior decoration. I'd have to hire a maid and God only knows what else. No thanks. You're still talking, Maeve. You were still hiding a lot from me. Owning your agency, your money, and who knows what else. Do you have any idea how often men have tried to become the love of my life when they found out what I have? Do you have any idea what it's like to constantly wonder if a man really needs you and not your money? What I knew about what you didn't know allowed us to build the relationship we have. On your part, maybe. What does this mean? This means that our relationship became possible because I could attend your dates while we were together, but we no longer have a relationship. What happened in your conference room today put an end to them. I meant what I said to your lawyer. There will be no marriage. That's not fair, Rob. Was it fair to me to surprise me today? Lure me into a conference room and then hit me with what you hit me with? Don't you think that since you decided that I didn't know what you had, you could prepare me for a meeting with Milton? I thought you'd be pleasantly surprised. Well, I was surprised, but it wasn't very pleasant. You're overreacting, Rob. Isn't that right? What's tomorrow? Thursday. And what was so special about to happen this Thursday? We were going to buy wedding rings. We don't even have wedding rings yet, Maeve. And this afternoon you and your lawyer were already planning what we would do with the divorce. That's not fair, Rob. Pre-training is the norm for people in my position. Well, this is not the standard for people in my position, and the last thing I expected was to get hit from the left flank. You need to get dressed and leave, Maeve. That's not what you mean, Rob. You can't mean that. I'm sorry, Maeve, but I can and I'm doing this. You have too many secrets, Maeve, and my ability to receive surprises is limited. Your need to push men around and your sudden wealth were enough for me. Get dressed and go. Find some submissive guy and mind your own business, but leave me alone. Maeve, just go away. Put the key on the table and leave. Watching her walk out the door was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but it had to be done. The Maeve I thought I knew didn't exist. It was hard for me to get Maeve out of my head. Her scent was still lingering on the bed. I washed the pillowcases, but her scent still lingered on the pillows themselves, just like on the mattress. I kept finding her things that she had forgotten. A hair clip here, a blouse button there, a lipstick that somehow rolled under the couch. Maeve called me 2 or 3 times a day, and eventually I had to change my home phone number, which was not listed in the directory, and a new mobile phone number. She called me at work, but I had already bribed Donna to do it. A couple of times when I came home from work, she was waiting for me in the parking lot, and as soon as I saw her, I drove out of the parking lot and found a sports bar where I could kill time until she left. Then there were 3 weeks when she didn't call me, or at work, or wait in my parking lot, and I started to think that she finally realized that everything was over between us and I could go on with my life. I'm so stupid. It was 10 in the morning, and I had just completed a deal I had been working on for 2 months. Donna looked into my office and said that Matt, my boss, wanted to see me in his office. I walked down the hall to him, and Charlotte, his secretary, told me to come in right away. I walked into Matt's office and found him standing next to his desk talking to Maeve. Matt saw me and said, "Here he is. Come on in. Rob, have a seat. I assume you've already met Miss Billings." Maeve looked at me and smiled, saying, "Good morning, Rob." She winced when I said, "Good morning, Miss Billings." Rob, Ms. Billings approached me with an advertising idea that I liked, and since she already knows you and you know all the intricacies of what we do, she asked you to work with her on it. This is really going to help us, Rob, so give her what she needs. I have a lot of things to do this morning, so why don't you walk Miss Billings out? Please call me Maeve. Why don't you invite Maeve to your office and she'll fill you in? However, in my office I asked, "What are you up to, Maeve?" Come on, Rob, you're not dumb. You don't answer my calls, you run away when you see me, so I needed a way to contact you that you couldn't avoid. I made your boss an offer that he couldn't refuse, and I told him that I would need to work with you on it. But why Maeve? I made it clear that we are in the past. Not while we're both alive, Rob. You're my man, and that's all that's required of you. I will do everything in my power to get and keep you. Nothing has changed, Maeve. You know my feelings, and they haven't changed. No more secrets, Rob. Just ask, and I'll tell you everything you want to know. I won't hide anything from you. And no premarital ties. Everything I have belongs to you unconditionally. All I want is you, Rob. I don't think so, Maeve. So what is this thing that you convinced Matt of, and what I need to do? Come on, Rob. We can't spend a few hours a day together, and I won't be able to get to you. Why extend it? That's what I did for 3 whole weeks. But she was right. I couldn't constantly be in her presence for several hours a day and stay away from her. Slowly but surely, she brought me back to her, and the wedding date was set. My apartment was too small, so I moved into Maeve's apartment, and then Maeve decided to spoil me. She thought I needed something more substantial than a 5-year-old Chevrolet pickup truck. So one day, when I came home from work, I found a Cadillac STS parked in my assigned parking space. I would have preferred something less ostentatious, but understanding Maeve's need to be in charge, I smiled and thanked her. Then she decided that the apartment was too small for us and decided it was time to get her own house. We looked at probably 100 options. I liked quite a few of them, but Maeve decided that the ones I liked weren't good enough. "We're going to have guests a lot, honey, so we need something with a pool and a big patio," is what she said. And I knew it perfectly well, she meant that I choose the house. What the hell did I care? I've been moving from apartment to house, and to tell you the truth, I wouldn't mind getting a house with a pool. In the end, she chose a 1,100 square meter house with 5 bedrooms, a pool on the ground floor, a huge patio, and 2 tennis courts. A 4-car garage was attached to the house, and it was located on a 2-hectare plot. She looked around and then did something she once admitted to me she didn't want to do. She hired a gardener to take care of the garden outside and signed a contract with Molly maids to take care of the house inside. We went shopping for furniture for a new house, and although she asked for my opinion, she bought what she wanted. There were some disagreements along the way, and when once or twice I insisted on something, she resented me, but I ignored her, and she liked it even less. But I knew she had a domineering nature, and for the most part, one let her have her way. I didn't lose sight of the fact that by giving in to her in everything, she might start to consider me spineless. And I was never going to let that happen, even if I had to fight hard for something. We were happy together for the first 3 years. Everything went smoothly as long as I let Maeve do what she wanted. Sometimes I put up obstacles, just to be honest. Control and responsibility have always been in place. When planning a vacation, I offered Cancun, but she refused, saying she wanted to go to St. Thomas. The next time I wanted to cross the ocean to England, she chose Vancouver. In the 3rd year, we were going to take a 3-week vacation, and she asked me where I thought we should go. By that time, I already knew the rules of the game, so I decided to sneak up on her unnoticed. We each had an office at home. She had one downstairs, next to the dining room, and I had one in one of the additional bedrooms upstairs, and one day, when she was not at home, I went into her office and sniffed everything out. I had seen literature and brochures on Australia and New Zealand and knew that if I said France or Spain, she would say maybe next time. But she would like to go to Australia and New Zealand. The next time she brought up the subject, I said that I had always dreamed of seeing New Zealand. Maybe some other time, but this year, I think we should go to England and maybe cross the English Channel and spend a couple of days in France. I knew she wanted to go to Australia, but it had to be her decision, not mine, and I knew that once I said I wanted to go to New Zealand, there was no way in the world she would go there. Why did I put up with all this nonsense? Because I loved this stupid fool, and if by giving in to her I made her happy, so be it. And besides, I didn't care where we went, as long as we went there together. In the 4th year, everything went wrong, although it took me a while to realize it. It all started with Maeve working late 2 or 3 times a week. There was always a good reason for that. Problems with the advertising campaign. Problems with a client who needed late meetings to resolve. Hey, Maeve worked in the advertising business, and that was what she was supposed to be doing, right? It took me a while to realize that on those nights when Maeve worked late, we never made love before going to bed. Too tired, baby. Not today, honey. I'm tired. Maybe tomorrow, honey. I have a terrible headache. Not now, Rob. I really don't feel like it. And this is after we rarely spent a week without making love 3, 4, and sometimes 5 times a week. Then other things happened. Phone calls, and when I answered, there was no one there. Or someone hung up on hearing my voice. Maeve was on the phone saying, "I have to go. We'll talk later." When I entered the room, she took a shower as soon as she got home, which she had never done before. A couple of times I returned home during the day and found that Maeve was also at home with a man. Every time with a different man. Both times I saw her car in the driveway and called out to her as I entered the house, and when I got to the kitchen, the man was already sitting at the table and Maeve was digging in the refrigerator. The story was that they were at a meeting with a client, returning to the office, and decided to stop and have lunch instead of returning to the office and then going out for lunch. Looking back, I can't believe how stupid I was. In my defense, I can only say that I was in love, and love can make you blind to some things. Why would I think she was cheating on me? Didn't she work her hardest to get me? Didn't she do everything, including practically crawling on all fours, to get me back after I broke up with her? The beginning of the end came by a happy coincidence. Maeve called me and said she would be working late again. 10 minutes after she called, a client from another city I was working with invited me to have dinner with him. The restaurant he wanted to go to was on the other side of town, in an area I rarely visited. It turned out that the reason he wanted to go there was because his daughter worked there as a waitress when she was in college. We arrived, met with his daughter, and had dinner. After dinner, he wanted to go to the bar across the street and have a drink or two. It was pretty dark inside, except for the dance floor. Fred and I took a corner booth in one of the far corners. I had already finished half of my first drink when Fred said, "So there was one lucky fool." I turned to see what he was looking at and saw Maeve dancing with some guy. She really looked amazing. She and the guy she was dancing with were pretty tight together. Some other guy might have gotten up and run onto the dance floor, kicked someone's ass, and then told his wife what he thought of her, but I didn't. On the one hand, somewhere deep down, I think I always expected that Maeve and I would not live together for long. I guess it started with those dates. She went on when we went out together and spent most of our nights together. I knew I was disappointed. I also knew that it was over between Maeve and me. The song ended. Maeve and the man kissed and left the dance floor to a booth where two more men were sitting. I finished my drink and told Fred I had to go, and he said he was going to spend the night with his daughter, so I said goodbye and left. I headed home and on the way started mentally making a list of what I needed to do. I was in bed when Maeve came home. Before going to bed, she took a shower, and when she lay down, she snuggled up to me, and I pretended to be asleep. In the morning, I got up and left before Maeve got up. When I got to work, I called the housing search service and told them what I needed. At lunchtime, I drove into a couple of used car parks, found a 2-year-old Chevrolet, and posted a deposit for it. Shortly before the end of the day, I called Maeve and told her that I would be working late, and then made sure that I would not go home until I found out that she had already gone to bed. For the next 2 weeks, I tried to avoid Maeve as much as possible. The housing search service found several places that met my criteria, and I went and looked at them. I chose one of them and made a deposit, and then opened the yellow pages, found a lawyer near the office, called, and made an appointment. By the time I had everything ready, it had been 3 weeks since I had seen Maeve at the Purple Mushroom. She was a little resentful of me because I avoided her, and we didn't have love for 3 weeks, but I was able to sell her the story that we had a very lucrative contract at work, and because of that I worked late. I was dead tired when I got home. You know how it is, Maeve. Look at how many late nights you spend working on campaigns and deals. There wasn't much she could say to that. Then the day came when my lawyer told me that the divorce papers were ready to be sent, and I arranged for Maeve to receive them at her office. The reason was irreconcilable differences. I couldn't commit adultery because I had no proof, but it didn't matter because all I wanted was to end the marriage, and I needed any reason to do so. That evening, I called Maeve and told her that I would be working late again. But you know what? We finished the paperwork today, and this will be the last night I have to work late. I scored an extra point and played billiards for a while until I decided that Maeve was already in bed, and then I went home. Maeve wasn't there when I arrived. I went to my home office and made sure that everything I wanted was packed and ready to ship. I had already arranged with George to help me load what I wanted into my truck the next day. I took one last look around and headed for the bedroom. I had no idea where Maeve was or who she was with, but I wanted to be in bed and pretend to be asleep when she came. I was just going up to the bedroom when Maeve came in. She wasn't alone. "Rob, this is Jack. Jack wants me to be his toy, and I don't think you'll mind. After all, you haven't had anything to do with me for almost a month. Jack thought you might be a little upset, but I told him if you didn't like it, you could leave." I turned to the guy and smiled, saying, "No problem, Jack. Obviously, she wants to be your love toy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have brought you to her house. The secret to a good marriage, Jack, is to let your wife do whatever makes her happy. By the way, to make it easier for everyone, I will move my things to one of the other bedrooms, and I will provide you with the master bedroom. Give me a minute and I won't bother you." When I turned to leave, I saw the shock on Maeve's face. I went into the bedroom, got a toothbrush and shaving supplies, took them to the bedroom down the hall, locked the door behind me, and got into bed. I had a smile on my face because Maeve had just made my life a lot easier. 20 minutes after I went to bed, someone tried to enter the room, but the door was locked. There was a knock on the door, but I ignored it. There were a couple more knocks, which I also ignored, and then Maeve called me. Rob? Open the door, Rob. Open the door, Rob, we need to talk. I just lay there and ignored her. She tried for 10 minutes, but I still didn't answer. Finally, she gave up and said, I'll talk to you in the morning. In the morning, I got up and left the house before Maeve woke up. I picked up George, and we went to breakfast. Then we drove to the parking lot at work and picked up the Chevrolet from where it had been parked since I bought it. George got behind the wheel of the Cadillac and followed me back into the house. Maeve left either to go to work or to take Jack to where she used him, and George and I started loading things into the truck. We did it in a little less than an hour. I threw my wedding ring and Cadillac keys on the kitchen table, and then we drove to my new apartment and started checking me in. We hadn't been there 10 minutes when my cell phone beeped. It was Maeve. I called you at work, and they told me that you took the day off. Where are you? I'm moving into my new apartment. What? Why the hell are you doing this? Think about it a little, Maeve. Maybe it will come to your mind. I disconnected and then turned off the phone. We moved everything, and I took George home, and then returned to my new apartment. I smiled when the alarm clock built into my wristwatch rang at 11. That was the time when we agreed to give Maeve the divorce papers. For a moment, I considered turning on my cell phone again to answer Maeve's call, but decided against the pleasure. I took a whole week off from work, so if I turned off my cell phone, it would take Maeve 5 days to get in touch with me. This time, a private investigator wouldn't be able to help her, at least not until I got back to work and he could walk me home. I spent those 5 days at the cabin I rented on Owens Lake and returned to work on Monday. There was a stack of messages from Maeve 10 centimeters high, and I threw them in the trash. I bribed Donna again not to connect me with Maeve on the phone, and then I went and talked to Matt for a while. I explained the situation to him and told him that I didn't care what kind of bargain Maeve could offer him. I won't have anything to do with her. I managed to avoid Maeve for almost a month, and then she played the only card she had. My lawyer called me and said that her lawyer had called and asked for a meeting. I guess I could just say, a meeting? We don't need this damn meeting. But I wanted it to be over as soon as possible, so I decided not to do anything that could slow down the course of events and said I would come. When I entered the room, Milton and Maeve were already sitting at the conference room table with my lawyer. Maeve started to get up, but Milton pulled her back. When I sat down, Milton glowered at me and muttered, I knew it. I just knew I needed to make a marriage alliance as soon as I saw you. I laughed and then asked, Are you a real lawyer, Milton? I mean, have you been accepted into the bar and all that? Milton started to say something, but I continued. A real lawyer, at least, would be familiar with the documents that were provided to his client. There's no need for a prenup, Milton, because the only thing I'm asking for is my freedom. I even gave her back the Cadillac she bought me. So, Milton, that's all I'm asking for, a divorce. I leaned back, turned to Milton and Maeve and asked, So what the hell is this meeting about? Maeve spoke up, I don't want you to leave, Rob. I don't want a divorce, and the fact that I invited you to this meeting seemed to be the only way to meet you face to face and talk. We have nothing to talk about, Maeve. It's over between us. Why, Rob? Why are you doing this? Does the name Jack mean anything to you? That's bullshit, Rob. The next morning you were no longer at home, and you were moving into a new apartment. You couldn't find a place to live and negotiate so quickly. Everything should have been ready before Jack arrived. Jack wasn't the first person you dated, and we both know it. Now, if we have nothing else to discuss, I have other things I can do with my time. Maeve then asked 2 lawyers to give her a few minutes alone with me. My lawyer looked at me. I shrugged, and he and Milton got up and left the room. As soon as the door closed behind them, Maeve said, There was no one else, Rob. Not even Jack was there. I know better, Maeve. I personally saw you in business with one of your guys. He wasn't my boyfriend, Rob. He's one of my customer service representatives, and we were at the Purple Mushroom, where we treated a client to wine. I saw you come in, and I asked Mac to help me pull your nose a little. You may have seen me, Maeve, but I'm willing to bet that it only happened after I saw you rubbing your crotch against that guy. And I don't believe he was the first. If he was the first, then I bet it lasted for a while until that night. That's not true, Rob. I've never had anyone but you. I don't believe that's true, Maeve. Why don't you believe that? It's true. Really, Maeve? Then explain a few things to me. And I listed all the signs indicating her infidelity, except for that night at the Purple Mushroom and the night she brought Jack to her house. She looked down at the table and then said, I swear to God, Rob, I've never had anyone else. I just sat there and looked at her. Honestly, Rob, no one but you. Looking at it now, I realized that it was stupid. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. Give what back, Maeve? It's all because of my domineering nature, Rob. I let it get the better of me. You never said no to me, Rob. You always gave in when I wanted something. I was wondering if you have any limits, a boundary beyond which you could fight back. But you never resisted. It didn't matter what I did, you agreed with it. So I came up with the brilliant idea of trying to find something that would make you angry, and I pretended that I was having an affair. I continued to do all the things that I thought might arouse your suspicions and require an explanation of what was going on. But you did nothing. Fake phone calls, and you still haven't said a word. The fact that I returned home late and then took a shower did not cause any comments. No matter what I did, it didn't piss you off. I started to think that you didn't care because you didn't really love me. I was starting to think that your leaving the meeting where Milton discussed the prenup was a ruse. You knew I was coming for you. So you played hard to get until I told you it was okay. No premarital ties. The night I saw you enter the Purple Mushroom, I was in a bad mood and decided to give you something that you can't ignore. I asked Mac to help me make fun of you, and when you didn't come out on the dance floor, I felt sick. That's when I realized you didn't care. I just knew that when I got home that night, you'd turn on me. You didn't say anything, and you didn't do anything. But I finally got a reaction. It wasn't what I wanted, but I got a reaction. You ignored me. The more you ignored me, the more angry I got, and the more angry I got, the more I wanted to do something that would shock you. And that's where Jack came in. When I hit you with Jack, you took it calmly, smiled, wished me luck, and left. It broke my heart. It proved that I don't mean anything to you. I sent Jack on his way and went to your bedroom to deal with you once and for all, but you wouldn't let me in or talk to me, and the next morning you left. I swear to you, Rob, I've never had anyone else. Of course it was, Maeve. There was another you. The other me? Yes, Maeve. There was a loving wife who spoiled me terribly, and then there was an insidious, domineering fool who could only play her perverted games. It's always been that way. A woman who loved me, and a cheater who had to go on dates from time to time. Obviously, it never stopped. I do not know at what point in our marriage you started going on dates again, and I do not care. Your games backfired and bit your ass, Maeve. I saw all the signs indicating treason and did not pay attention to them because they must have been innocent coincidences. It had to be like that because I just knew that you had to love me as much as I love you. I saw the signs, but I didn't pay attention to them because I loved you too much to believe that they could be true. Then the Purple Mushroom appeared, and I realized that all this must have been true. I never pushed you back, Maeve, because I loved you and wanted you to be happy. It seemed like responsibility, control, made you happy, so I let things take their course. Well, Maeve, you wanted to find out if I had limits, and now you know I have them. You found them and made me step over them. I hope you're happy now that you know where they are. So you're coming home? No, Maeve. I'm leaving and I'm not going back. I already told you once that I have a limited ability to receive surprises. You've crossed that line. Does it matter to you that I love you? Of course it's important, Maeve, but I'm not going to go through this shit every time your hair stands on end. It's never going to happen again, Rob. I swear to God. It will never happen again. You kind of promised me something like that once, and we both remember how it turned out. No more surprises, like you said, but here they are. In 2 years, 5 or maybe 10 years, I don't want to go through this again. We'd better get this over with right now and move on. I don't want a divorce, Rob. I didn't want to have an unfaithful wife either. I've listened to your story, and maybe some of it, or even all of it, may be true. But deep down I'll always wonder if your story was true or made up specifically for this occasion. The little things surprised me. Something like you saying that in the purple mushroom, you finally realized that I don't care. If you believe that I didn't care and didn't do anything that night, why did you take a shower when you got home and before you went to bed? I will always suspect that you cheated on me, and I will not live like this. I'll always see you and Mac cuddling up to each other, and then when the song ends, you kiss long and hard. I'll always see the smirk on Jack's face when you say you're going to be his love toy. It's over, Maeve. I'm not giving you a divorce, Rob. I'm going to spend every cent I have fighting this. You can stop this, Maeve. You have enough money to pay Milton for filing and for everything lawyers do for years, and I won't be able to pay my lawyer to fight you. But it won't matter, Maeve, because I'm gone and I'm not coming back. Get used to it, Maeve. As a couple, we're in the past, and you have no one to blame but yourself. Maeve spent her money to keep Milton busy drafting petitions, protocols, and everything else. I paid off my lawyer and went on with my life. It's been over 2 years now, and Maeve and I are still legally married. Once or twice a month, she calls me and asks if I'm awake. Are you ready to return home? I never answer her except to hang up the phone. During this time, I had a lot of friends. One even moved in with me and lived with me for a while. At least until she realized that marriage was not going to happen to us, and then we slowly drifted apart. I guess that's a good thing, because I'm not sure I'll ever want to get married again. I believe that sooner or later Maeve will still want to, and when that happens, she will be able to take care of the divorce. Maybe just out of spite I'll fight it. End.